Hello again. Last week I mentioned that excess deaths in this country were running at a very high level and that all the signs were that this trend was accelerating. I had no idea then how swiftly this would happen. When I made the video last week, I mentioned that there had been around 2,000 excess deaths in the first week of January. That is to say 2,000 more deaths than the 5-year average for the first week in January. This was bad enough, but the latest figures show that the following week was much, much worse. 3,377 excess deaths. That is to say almost 3,500 deaths more than were seen in the same week in the last 5 years. We are now seeing death rates comparable to those seen during the COVID affair. A lot of those dying are younger people, which is both puzzling and disturbing. In the description to this video, I give a link to the website of the Office for National Statistics, and you can see the official government figures for yourself. Scroll down until you see the graph for the death rate each week over the last 3 years, and you'll see something very alarming. The soaring death rate in this country looks precisely as though a dreadful epidemic is taking grip in Britain. The pattern looks identical to that which was seen during COVID. The only thing is, there is no such epidemic currently sweeping the country. The flu epidemic has reached its peak and numbers of those in hospital are falling. Even on the most optimistic reckoning, deaths from COVID can account for only 1/7 of those excess deaths that we see in the graph. The people dying unexpectedly are not the old and sick. Many of them are middle-aged and some are even children. They are dying from all kinds of different causes: cancer, heart problems, pneumonia and so on. For some reason though, 3,500 more than usual died in the last week for which we have records. I wonder why that might be. One possibility, which I mentioned last week, might be that the lockdowns and social distancing prevented us from building up our natural immunity in the way that we usually do. That is to say, coming into regular contact with other people's germs. All those face masks would have made this a lot worse too. In other words, it could be that the measures taken to tackle COVID are now resulting in thousands of deaths. It would be, well, to say the least of it, ironic if the measures taken to combat COVID ended up in the long term killing more people than COVID itself did. Then too, stopping people from seeing their doctors or receiving treatment from cancer is likely to have a bad effect over the years and result in more people dying. What I find a little disturbing about all this is that when the number of excess deaths reached this level during the COVID business, it was front page news, and we were told that there were more excess deaths than there had been since the Second World War. This time, though, there seems to be a general agreement that nobody wishes to talk about what is going on. Not only is it not headline news, there's no mention at all of the situation on television. We are in the midst of a catastrophic rise in the death rate in this country, and yet nobody will take any notice or talk about it. Why is that, do you suppose? If next week's death rate rises as sharply as it has over the first 2 weeks of this month, then we are likely to find that the number of excess deaths will exceed that at the height of the COVID panic. Do you think that if this happens, anybody will take notice and ask what on earth is going on?